IELTS reading is gradually changing and it's not getting easier. I've done a lot of research into the latest IELTS trends, and this video took a ridiculously long time to prepare. But I'll show you how to solve every question type in sections 1, 2, and 3 of the most recent test available to us. And I'll point out all the updates so you know what to expect in your test. And the very first change you should definitely be aware of, especially if you use some older tests in your preparation. And that's where the answers to each set of questions are located in the passage. Back in the day, I even heard from a real IELTS test writer that the answers could be found in the most logical order. Indeed, take Cambridge 16, for example. And in passage 1, we have 2 sets of questions. You could bet that the answers to the first set were in the first half of the text and then the answers to the second in the second half. Well, not anymore. In our test, answers to the first set of questions are in the first half of the passage and then in the middle of the second half. But the answers to the second set are in some of the paragraphs you've already read and have to read again, and then in the remaining paragraphs. And the types of questions are exactly the same. And you see, the pattern is getting more complex. To be fair, the difference in the second and third sections is less obvious than in the first, but still, it's less straightforward. I'll show you. But before we go to our test, let's establish how many answers you actually need to pass your exam. In IELTS reading, you have 40 questions and 60 minutes, no changes here. And for IELTS academic, if you answer 23 questions, you get a band 6, 30 questions for a band 7, and 35 for a band 8. For general training, the texts are a bit easier and you need a few more correct answers for the same band. So 30 answers for a band 6, 35 for a band 7, and 38 for a band 8. And the exact conversion can change slightly from test to test, but the big idea is you can get some of the answers wrong and still reach your band. Now let's open the test. And I must say, I disagree with these instructions at the very start. You should spend about 20 minutes on questions 1 to 13, and then the same for sections 2 and 3, 20, 20, 20. It sounds neat, but that's bad advice. Why? Oh, because section 1 is the easiest and section 3 is the hardest. The passages get more complex and it just takes more time to find those answers. If you give section 1 the full 20 minutes, you're basically wasting your time on the easy part and then rushing through the most difficult questions at the end. A much better approach, if your English allows, is 15 minutes for section 1, 20 for section 2, and 25 for section 3. And if you're aiming for a high band, test yourself with an even faster version. Around 12 minutes for section 1, 18 on section 2, and 23 on section 3. And that leaves you about 7 minutes at the end to go back to those questions you skipped. Just make sure that extra speed doesn't mean extra mistakes. And one important habit, don't get stuck on a single question. If something's taking too long, make your best guess, move on, come back at the end if you still have time. Okay, so we're clear about the instructions. Now we have this long passage. Shall you read it or not? There are 2 approaches. Text first means you read the whole passage before you look at the questions. And questions first means you don't read the passage. You look at the first set of questions, you read them, and then you start answering them by reading the passage for the first time. And for years, I had the view that you could read the text if you're a fast reader, but you don't have to, and you can comfortably solve the test starting with the questions. But now, Locating the answers is getting more difficult. So I think if you can skim the passage without wasting a terrible lot of time on it, perhaps you should. And in this video, I'll be showing you where the answers are, so we're not gonna read the whole text. But let's read the title. The kakapo. The kakapo is a nocturnal, flightless parrot that's critically endangered and one of New Zealand's unique treasures. So that gives you an idea of what we're gonna read about. And now let's look at the first set of questions. These are true, false, not given. And these questions can be tricky. So let me give you a step-by-step strategy to find more answers and also tell you how to avoid some common mistakes. Okay, here is the strategy. First, remember what these questions are testing. So true, false, not given are about the facts in the passage, not your own knowledge or someone's opinion. The good thing is that the answers come in the same order as the questions. And this means you can read the first statement and then you start reading the passage until you find the answer. Then you read the second statement and you continue reading the passage. Read each statement carefully and underline the keywords, including names, numbers, and dates. Then start quickly reading the passage until you locate your answer. And compare the meaning, not individual words. IELTS loves paraphrasing, and you probably won't see the same words. You'll see synonyms or a rephrased version. I find that with these questions, it's really easier to answer them if you truly understand what each option means. So, true, the meaning of the statement is close enough to the meaning in the passage. Even if the wording is slightly different, don't overthink it. If the message is very close, it's true. False. This means there is a clear contradiction and the passage says something very different. Not 1%, not quite the same, but completely different. And not given, that's the trickiest one. And it doesn't mean you can't find it at all. You should still be able to find a place where the topic is discussed. But you won't be able to say if the statement is true or false because a key piece of information is missing, so it's not given. A few extra tips from my personal experience. In a set of questions, exam writers will usually use all three options, at least one true, one false, one not given. If you end up with, say, 5 trues in a row, that's a red flag and worth a check. And I know that one of the reasons why my students sometimes answer incorrectly is that they start overthinking tiny differences. Instead, ask yourself, is the meaning close enough or is it very different? If it's basically the same, it's true. If it's clearly different, it's false. If you generally can't tell if it's true or false, it's not given. But of course, all these strategies only work if you apply them in practice. So let's solve a couple of questions together. To save some time, let's only solve number 1, 2, 4, and 5. You'll see why in a second. To start, we'll read each statement and highlight the keywords. Number 1. There are other parrots that share the kakapo's inability to fly. What would you highlight? I'd say inability to fly. Probably it's gonna be paraphrased. Number 2. Adult kakapo produce chicks every year. I would say chicks. So they lay eggs and have little parrots. Number 4. The Polynesian rat, oh yeah, that's a name, was a greater threat to the kakapo than Polynesian settlers. Yes, we highlight both and probably will find these exact words in our passage. And number 5, kakapo were transferred from Rakiura Island, yes, to other locations because they were at risk of feral cats. Well, highlight feral cats too. So these keywords are unlikely to be paraphrased because these are names. Okay, and now pause the video and find your answer to question number 1. Okay, we're looking for something about their inability to fly. And in this first paragraph, we can read, "It is the world's only flightless parrot." Yes, so it's unable to fly. But the text says it's the only one, while the statement says there are other parrots that are unable to fly. So there is a direct contradiction. The answer is false. Now pause the video and solve question number 2. So the statement is adult kakapo produce chicks every year. So we're looking for something about chicks. We resume reading the passage where we stopped and we keep on reading, and there is nothing in this paragraph, so we continue reading, and here we find this. Kakapo breed, or they have chicks, in summer and autumn, but only in years when food is plentiful. So not in all years, only in some years. While the statement actually says that kakapo produce chicks every year. Again, there is a direct contradiction. The answer is false. Let's go to question number 4. Pause the video now. Again, we continue reading the passage and we keep on reading, and then somewhere here we read about Polynesian settlers and then about Polynesian rat. And if we continue reading, we find European colonizers. So the topic changes, which means that our answer should be in the first half of this passage. So what can we find here? So for Polynesian settlers, kakapo was easy prey, so they ate poor birds. And then for Polynesian rat, which also preyed on kakapo, but the statement says that the rat was a greater threat than settlers. Is it true? We don't know. The answer is not given. And please note that we still read about both rats and settlers. It's just that we can't say whether it was a greater threat or a threat less great. That's why the answer is not given. Okay, for question number 5, I can tell you that the answer is further in the passage. And here is the second part of it. And you will continue by reading this paragraph. Would you expect that the answer is here? Probably, but it's not. Then this one. And again, the answer is not here. I can tell you the answer is in this paragraph. So when you're reading, sometimes there are paragraphs with no answers, and you may feel confused and perhaps decide that the answer is not given, but trust yourself, keep on reading. Now pause the video and answer question number 5. Here we can find all our keywords. Predation by feral cats on Rakiura Island led to a rapid decline of kakapo, and the surviving population was evacuated to 3 island sanctuaries. And this means that kakapos were transferred to other locations because they were at risk. So this statement is true. So how did it go? By the way, count how many questions you answer correctly in this video and post in the comments at the end. I'd love to know how you're doing. And it's time to move on to the next set of questions. In our case, these are fill in the blank questions, and we need to complete the notes below. Choose one word and or a number from the passage for each answer. And this means your answer may be just one word, parrot, or a number, 13, or a word and a number, 13 parrots, but not 2 words like red parrot or even a parrot. Okay, the instructions may also read just one word only or no more than 2 words from the passage. And that's a rule. If you write more words than allowed, even if the meaning is correct, you'll lose the mark. And there are a few types of filling the blanks questions, and we're not going to go into too much detail. What you should know is that filling the blank questions mostly come in order. So sometimes a couple of questions may be swapped around, but most are in order. And here is a simple, reliable process. Read the title and the subtitles in the task, which will tell you where to find your answers. Read each note and look at the grammar around the gap. Does it look like you need a noun, a verb, an adjective? Then go to the relevant part of the text and skim to locate the information that matches the note. The wording will often be paraphrased, so look for the idea, not exact words. And when you think you found the right word, add it to the gap and check. Is the sentence grammatically correct? Does it make sense? A really common issue is with articles. So in these tasks, you never include a, an, or the as part of your answer. If an article is needed, it will be in the question. For example, have a look at question number 7. Diet consists of fern fronds, various parts of a tree, and... So this means our answer is either plural, seeds, or uncountable, water, because there is no article. Okay, let's solve a couple of questions together. Where do you find your answers? Let's have a look at the questions. First of all, where can you locate your answers? Well, in this case, we have some subheadings that tell us a type of parrot, arrival of Polynesian settlers, arrival of European colonizers, protecting kakapo. And indeed, we've read about it when looking for our true, false, not given questions. For example, the Polynesian settlers and European colonizers are here. But we find answers to missing word questions in order, which means that you need to start looking from the beginning of the passage. And right now, I'd like you to find the answers to question number 7 and 8. And again, we begin with identifying some keywords. I would say diet, that consists of fern fronds, various parts of a tree, and something. And nests are created in where legs are laid. So the keyword is nests. Go ahead and pause the video. So question number 7 is about what parrots eat. And again, we start skimming the passage quickly, looking for information about their diet. But the word diet may not be in the passage. However, in our case, it is. And their diet includes the leaves, roots, bark of trees, as well as bulbs and fern fronds. So which one is the answer? Let's compare. So fern fronds are here, yes, and then various parts of a tree, and all these are parts of a tree, which means our answer is bulbs. And the next question, number 8. Nests are created in where eggs are laid, and we know that this paragraph number 3 describes breeding and nesting too. And we can read this. Eggs are laid in soil. So the answer is soil. That's where nests are created. I guess you've understood how to deal with these questions. So let's move on because I really want to show you the questions in section 2. Well, first of all, let's read the title and the subtitle. Return of the Elm, reintroducing the beloved tree to Britain. Mark Rowe investigates attempts to reintroduce elms to Britain. And we see letters next to each paragraph or section. If you're thinking matching headings, I want to reassure you that no, that's not the correct answer. Lately, matching headings have been used less often than in the past. And you would actually see the task before the paragraph. This task that may seem quite similar but is actually different. It's matching paragraph information. And before we start solving it, I want you to see all the types of tasks related to this passage. So the second one is called matching features. This one is interesting because we need to match each statement with the correct person. So we should highlight all the surnames in the passage. And I'm going to be highlighting all the surnames when I'm solving the first task. And now the third task is complete the summary below. There's nothing we need to know about it right now, so let's start with our matching paragraph information. It's such a common task today, but it's not easy to locate the answers for this one. So here is how you can solve it faster. Let's have a look. Our reading passage has 7 sections. Which section contains the following information? Write the correct letter. Yes, that's important. The answer is a letter, not a number. So if it's in the first section, the answer is A, not 1. You should also pay attention to the next line. You may use any letter more than once. You may have this condition or not. But if you have it, this means that usually you will use one letter twice, or you will find 2 answers in the same section. Sometimes my students mix up matching paragraph information and matching headings, and that leads to mistakes. Because these tasks may look similar, but the idea or what you actually need to do is quite different. With matching headings, you're looking for the main idea of each paragraph. With matching information, you're hunting for specific details, a particular fact, example, or reference. In this video, we're not going to look into matching headings, but I have a separate, super detailed video with the strategies and a lot of practice. And I have similar in-depth videos for all the major question types. And I'm going to link this playlist below the video and also at the end. Here is how to approach it. So we've read the passage title and we're not gonna read the whole passage before answering this type of questions. We're gonna read the passage as we're answering them. So we may use any letter more than once. First of all, read all the statements and highlight keywords. To do this efficiently, it helps to separate 2 different types of keywords. Some are unchangeable. These are names, dates, and special terms like Karen Russell, 1920s, or superbugs. These are usually not paraphrased, so you can scan the passage to find them quickly. Changeable keywords are normal vocabulary that can be paraphrased. For example, a statement says decline in population. The text might say numbers fell sharply. Okay, so we've identified our keywords. Now go to paragraph A, read it, look through all the statements and see if any of the information was covered in that paragraph. And make sure the meaning of the whole statement matches, not just some keywords. If you can't see the answer, don't reread the paragraph. Move on to paragraph 2, then 3, or B, C, and so on. Remember, not every paragraph must be matched. For example, in our task, we have 5 questions and 7 sections. So at least one section can be used twice, so probably will be used twice. And this means that 2 or 3 sections have no answers in them. So finish the passage and then return to any questions you haven't answered. Shall we solve some questions together? Let's try to match the first 3 paragraphs, not the whole text. But you need to be very careful because there are some tricks and you need to pay attention. I'd like to see if you can figure it out. So pause the video and find your answers. Okay, so I've read all the statements and highlighted all the keywords in yellow. When I'm reading the passage, I also highlight all the dates and surnames. We know we need surnames for our next task, matching features, so if you highlight them now, you make your life a lot easier. Okay, could you match paragraph A? Probably not, because A is not matched to any of the statements. What about B? I found this. A second epidemic was triggered by shipments of elm from Canada. And so beetles that spread the deadly fungus were there. And that is very similar to the reference of how Dutch elm disease was brought into Britain. And please note that the whole statement matches, not just some keywords. So B, 16. What about C? I could find this. So once the trunk of the elm reaches a certain diameter, it becomes a perfect size for beetles to lay eggs and for the fungus to take hold. And that is a reference to the stage at which young elms become vulnerable to Dutch elm disease. So C18. But is there anything else here? I think we have one more answer. Have you found it? How about this? So Russell says the key is to study those trees that have survived, but the opportunities are limited as the number of these mature survivors is small. And that is very similar to the research problems that arise from being only a few surviving large elms. So you see, again, the whole statement matches. So C matches 14 and 18. And as you remember, we have this note in our question. You may use any letter more than once, and when we have it, you will use one of the letters twice, usually. So we've already done that. If you got it correctly, really well done. Let's have a look at the next task, matching features. So that's where you usually have a list of options in a box. Often researchers' names, years, places, we have a list of people. And then a set of statements on top of it, questions 19 to 23. Your job is to decide who did or said each thing. You match the statement to the person. And always check if this note is here. You may use any letter more than once. Indeed, it is. And the questions are not in order. And that means if you start with the first statement, number 19, and then go looking for the answer in the passage, you waste a lot of time. Here is a strategy. So we've checked that the instructions say you may use any letter more than once. Next, read all the options in the box first. For example, we have our surnames A, B, C. Highlight these names in the passage. We've already done that while solving the previous task, right? So we're slightly ahead. Now read the statements and try to remember what each one is about. And then scan the passage for the first name, for one name at a time. When you see Dr. Smith, for example, slow down and read the whole quote attributed to this person. It may be before the name or after. Then try to match the name to the statement, yes or no. Sometimes you read something in the passage, but it cannot be matched to anything. Just move on to the next name. Finish the whole passage and then return to any statements you couldn't match the first time round. I think it's time for some practice. It will really be a lot clearer when we do it together. Let's take a look at the first 3 paragraphs which we've already read. And if you're highlighting surnames, then you already see them in the text. Now, pause the video and try to match them to the statements. I've highlighted all the keywords as well. And now let's have a look at the first surname, Matt Elliott. And then which quote is attributed to him? Let's find it. So it starts somewhere here and finishes here. And if we read it, we see this. The impact is difficult to picture if you hadn't seen what was there before, and when you see old photographs, you realize the impact. And that's very similar to number 23. You understand the effect Dutch elm disease has had when you see evidence of how prominent the tree once was. So the evidence is the old pictures. So 23A. Now the second surname is Karen Russell, and the quote begins here and ends somewhere here. Could you match it to anything? Well, I couldn't. I don't think there is an answer here. But Ms. Russell continues her thoughts here, here, and here. And we need to very much read the whole paragraph. And if we do, so Russell says that we need to study those trees that have survived and what are the reasons for their survival. And that is very similar to statement 21. There must be an explanation for the survival of some mature elms. The next set of questions is complete the summary. We're not going to solve them, but there's one important thing I want to show you. So where to find your answers? Look at the title. Uses of a popular tree. Do you remember reading about it? If not, there are some keywords. Bronze Age, the 18th century, and cutty sark. Indeed, they are all close by in our paragraph. And if you highlight keywords when you read the passage, you'll be able to answer questions like this in no time. Let's move on to the most challenging section, number 3, and the 3 types of tasks you really need to understand to get a band 7, 8, or 9. So let's have a look at what we have. The title is How Stress Affects Our Judgment. So we're expecting some multiple choice questions, sentence endings, complete each sentence with the correct ending. And this is a task we see more frequently in recent tests. And yes, no, not given. We always have a set in each test. And I would really encourage you to prepare for each of these tasks because to answer section 3 questions, you really need to understand the subtleties of the meaning. So starting with multiple choice questions. Choose the correct letter A, B, C, or D. And we have 4 questions. How do you solve these questions? Well, first of all, the questions appear in the same order as in the passage. You're not bouncing around, searching randomly. So first of all, start by really understanding the question. Take a moment to highlight the keywords. They are gold. Sometimes the question even tells you the exact paragraph where the answer is. Other times, a surname or another keyword will tell you where to look. Then, skim the options quickly. You just want a general sense of what each option is about. No need to spend too much time on them now. Next, locate the answer in the passage or just go straight to the paragraph mentioned in the question. Then slow down and compare the passage with each option. And here's the trick. Several keywords will be mentioned in that paragraph, but only one statement fully matches the meaning. That's why you can't just match words, you have to match ideas. And as you go, cross out incorrect options. Sometimes the first option that sounds right isn't. So look at all the options before you select your final answer. Okay, now let's see how we can apply this strategy in practice. We have 4 questions, and actually each question tells us where we can locate the answer in the first paragraph, in the second, in the 4th, in the 7th. Okay, that's good. But let's just find the first 2. Go ahead, pause the video and find your answers. Okay, so we've read the first paragraph. What was it about? Let's read each option. Defining some commonly used terms. We actually haven't seen any terms. This is incorrect. Cross it out. B. Questioning a widely held assumption. Oh, actually, the paragraph didn't go against any piece of knowledge we commonly see as true, so no. C. Mentioning a challenge faced by everyone. Indeed, it says we all sometimes require to weight up information under stressful conditions. So yes, it looks like C may be our answer, but let's still check D. Specifying a situation that makes us most anxious. No. Okay, so C is our answer. What about 28? Again, read the question first. What point does the writer make about firefighters? Let's read the second paragraph and have a look. Starting from option A, the regular changes in stress levels in their working lives make them ideal study subjects. Oh, actually, we've read about it here. These ups and downs presented the perfect setting for an experiment on how people's ability to use information changes when they feel under pressure. And indeed, that's what A is about. But let's still look through each option because sometimes the first option that looks right may not be right. So B, the strategies they use to handle stress are of particular interest. We haven't read about the strategies. No. The stressful nature of their jobs is typical to many public service professions. Well, luckily, no. And D, their personalities make them especially well suited to working under stress. Again, we haven't read about it. The answer is A. Okay, how did that go? Ready to move on to the next task? You should really have a look at this one because these questions are used a lot more frequently these days, matching sentence endings. Complete each sentence with the correct ending. And we see a number of statements from 31 to 35. These are the beginnings of our sentences. And then we have the endings in the box from A to G. So matching sentence endings looks a bit like other matching tasks, but there is one important difference. This is the only matching task that actually comes in order. This means that you can answer question 31, then 32, and so on. Let me walk you through how to solve these. Well, first of all, start by reading the beginning of each sentence. Highlight your keywords and be ready for paraphrasing. Then read all the endings and pay particular attention to the endings that may seem similar to each other. Skim the passage to find the relevant part. So have a question in mind, 31, the first one, and then start skimming the passage. And when you think that you found the right place, slow down, compare the part of the text with the endings in the box. And here is something students often forget. Several endings may sound possible, but only one will match the meaning exactly. So don't choose an ending just because it makes sense or the vocabulary looks similar. Don't fall into these traps. And if several endings seem to match a certain statement, jot down all the answers and come back to that statement at the end. Some of the sentence endings may, by that point, be used to answer other questions and your answer will become more obvious. In our passage, one very important part that may surprise you is where to locate your answers. You may think that the answers are located after the answers to the multiple choice questions, and in the past, that would often have been the case. But today, they are not. They are in the same part of the text as multiple choice question answers. Let's have a look. The part about locating your answers may really throw you off track here. So for multiple choice questions, we were actually told which paragraphs we need to read, and those were number 1, 2, 4, and 7. So the next one. And we haven't really read what's here. But if we have a look at our statements, we see the same keyword, the firefighters, and then the students. So we need to find the part about the experiment with firefighters. And part of it was in paragraph 4, and the rest is in paragraphs 5 and 6. So I've just marked them, and that's where the answers are. Now let's read the statements and highlight the keywords. So I would say relaxed, and when they were stressed, and when they were told good news, and cortisol levels and heart rates, and negative information. Okay, now pause the video and match the sentence endings which you can find in this part of the text. Okay, so we know the answers are in order, so we're looking for this one. At times when they were relaxed, the firefighters usually, relaxed or something similar. We can find it here. People are normally quite optimistic. They will ignore bad news and embrace the good. This is what happened when the firefighters were relaxed. Okay, that's our keyword. But when they were under stress, so stress is the next keyword. So the first answer should be here. What is it? It's B. When they were relaxed, we can find it here. People are normally quite optimistic. They will ignore bad news and embrace the good. So they will accept the good news but not the bad. This is what happened when the firefighters were relaxed. So they will behave the same way as people. And if we look through our options, so at times when they were relaxed, the firefighters usually made them feel optimistic? No. Took relatively little notice of bad news? Yes, that sounds good. But let's check the others. Responded to negative and positive information the same way? No, not the same. Were feeling under stress? No, not when they were relaxed. Put themselves in a stressful situation? No. Behaved in a similar manner regardless of the circumstances? No. Thought it more likely that they would experience something bad? Again, no. So our answer is B. When they are relaxed, they took relatively little notice of bad news. They will ignore the bad and embrace the good. Now, the next question, 32. The researchers noticed that when the firefighters were stressed, and that is further. So when they were under stress, a different pattern emerged. They became hypervigilant to bad news, even when it had nothing to do with their job, and altered their beliefs in response. And again, if we look through our statements one by one, made optimistic, no. Responded to negative and positive the same way, no. Were feeling under stress, no. Stressful, no. Stressful situation, behaved in a similar way, no. Thought it more likely that they would experience something bad. Yes, that's our answer. 32G. Now, what about 33? When the firefighters were told good news, they always, and we can find it here. In contrast, stress didn't change how they responded to good news. Stress didn't change that. And that means that's option F. They behaved in a similar manner, or stress didn't change how they responded to good news. 33F. Okay, we have just one set of questions left, and you can often find it at the very end of the test, and answering these 5 questions correctly when you don't have much time left can really make a difference to your score. Let's have a look at our yes, no, not given questions. They're quite similar to true, false, not given, but there are some important differences you should know about. And then you'll be able to solve them more successfully. So the first big difference. True, false, not given questions are about facts. But yes, no are about the writer's opinions or beliefs. So we don't look for factual information, we look for attitude. For example, the statement may be, parents should help their children as little as possible. You may disagree with it, but it doesn't mean the answer is no. It's about what the writer thinks, And if the writer agrees with that, then the answer is yes. So don't rely on your own knowledge or your own opinion. Another difference. The language is usually more complex. So quite often you can find an answer to a true, false, not given question in a single sentence, maybe two. But to answer yes, no, not given questions, you may need to read a whole paragraph. And one more helpful thing. The questions usually come in order, which makes it easier to move through the passage logically. And finally, if the writer talks about the topic but gives no attitude, no approval, no criticism, no judgment, the answer is usually not given. Ready for some practice? Let's have a look at our questions. Well, first of all, let's highlight the keywords to understand what we're looking for. So in the first one, the tone of the content we post on social media. And then phones have a greater impact on our stress levels than other electronic media devices. So phones, I would say. And the more we read about a stressful public event on social media, the less we're able to take the information in. So a stressful public event. And then stress created by social media posts can lead us to take unnecessary precautions. And our tendency to be affected by other people's moods can be used in a positive way, so other people's moods. So now we know what our questions are about, and let's answer the first three. And to help you, let me show you where it is in the passage. So we've read the first half of the text with you, and there was nothing about social media and phones. So we start scanning these paragraphs, and there's nothing in the first and nothing in the second. And then we start reading about the co-workers, so that's a bit closer than firefighters. Oh, and here it is, social media. So our answers will be somewhere here. And they are in order. And now pause the video and find them. Let's read the statement again. The tone of the content we post on social media tends to reflect the nature of the posts in our feeds. Reflect the nature, it means to be of the same nature. And in the passage we read, so when we observe positive feeds on social media, such as images of a pink sunset, we're more likely to post uplifting messages. And when we observe negative posts, such as complaints, we'll in turn create more negative posts. So they reflect the nature, right? So the answer is yes. Now the next one. Phones have a greater impact on our stress levels than other electronic media devices, with other media devices and greater impact. Let's see. To find the answer, let's continue reading this passage. And basically, it describes in detail what kind of stress our phones cause. But there is nothing about comparing the impact of phones and other electronic media devices. So let's continue reading the next paragraph. And then we find this keyword, after a stressful public event. But that is question number 38. So this means the answer to 37 should be somewhere here. But there is no comparison, and this means the answer is not given. Number 38. The more we read about a stressful public event on social media, the less able we are to take the information in. To take the information in means to understand what's going on and to act upon it. And we are less able to do so. Is it true? Well, let's have a look. So after a stressful public event, we read that individuals become very aware of the information, and when stress is triggered, it's spreading from one person to the next. Here is the important part. This temporarily enhances the likelihood that people will take in negative reports. We actually even have the same verb to take in, but they are more likely. It enhances the likelihood. They're more likely. They're not less able. This is a direct contradiction, so the answer is no. Okay, how did it go for you? We've covered 19 questions in this video. How many could you answer correctly? Let me know in the comments. I'd really like to know how your preparation's going. And if you'd like to continue your IELTS reading practice, I have super detailed videos for all the main question types, including matching headings. So the video is right here. The playlist is linked below, and thank you so much for watching me today. Good luck with your preparation and your exam. Bye!